A while ago, I published a video talking about Flashpoint, where I explained why it's an unfairly hated game mode, and why I think it's actually one of the best modes in Overwatch 2. Today, I'll be doing the opposite of that. See, lots of people didn't like my comments about Push, so I figured I'd make a video telling you all why you're all wrong. Why I think Push is a flawed game mode. But in order to explain why I don't like Push, I need to talk about why I enjoy Flashpoint and Control, and have mixed feelings on Hybrid and Escort. So, to make a long story short, Control is the most fair game mode in all of Overwatch. There's barely an argument for it being unfair towards one side. And this is really what I look for in a game mode, fairness. I want a game mode to be even for both sides, and for both teams to have the same value on one character. In Hybrid and Escort, a Torbjorn on defense is a different character than a Torbjorn on attack. That, along with matches lasting twice as long and competitive, has led me to have a sour taste for those modes. I don't hate them, but I prefer other modes. Finally, Flashpoint. It has its problems and isn't completely fair, but it fixes one of the few problems Control has, which is stale fights. Fights in Control feel very same in between matches. All fights take place in the same spots. Flashpoint doesn't really have this problem. Since the map is so big, it allows for points to have tons of different ways to fight on them. Along with that, the movement between points adds extra spots to fight. So, now that we have that out of the way, you know what I want in a game mode. Fairness, dynamic fights, and not taking forever to finish. And each and every one of these problems can be found in Overwatch's worst game mode. That game mode being Assault. Bet you thought I was gonna say Push there. No, I don't hate it that much. But in order to talk about Push, we need to make a small detour to Assault. Since Push was made to replace it come the swap from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, Assault was, in almost every sense of the word, a bad game mode. You know how almost every hybrid map has that one annoying first point that feels fucking impossible to push, and one you still joyfully try to get past since everything after is actually tolerable? Well, what if the entire game mode was that point, but twice? What makes the objectives in Flashpoint and Control so fun to push is both sides are even, whether they're attacking or defending for the most part, and there's always more than one way to push through. So how come on Assault there's only ever one way to push in? Sorry. Sometimes you get two if they're generous. Not that the number of points to push through matters, since they all feel equally impossible to actually get through. Not helping this were the spawn points. If you were a defender, the first point spawn point was so fucking far back that you'd never have any chance to take the point back after a single lost fight. But don't worry, on the second point, the spawn door may as well just drop you onto the point. If I had a nickel for every Assault game that just ended with the enemy blindly throwing themselves onto the point for an hour straight, I'd probably have enough money to buy every single Kiriko skin! And of course, it also had the problem where in competitive modes, it just took way longer to wrap up. So, in the transition from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, it was a perfect time to get rid of the game mode. So, in order to fill the gap left by the removal of this mode, Team 4 cooked up Push! Now, how do I feel about Push? Oh boy, I wonder what she's gonna say next! I don't like it, which kinda sucks, seeing as on the surface, Push seems like an amazing game mode. It seems like the best of all worlds, even maps a moving objective, and it doesn't have to be played twice in competitive modes. Unfortunately, certain cracks keep this mode from being great. But before we talk about that, please look at the numbers. One is very smaller, and I need that small number to be big number. There's a button, it says subscribe. It should be red, but it's gray for some reason. Click that, please, and then I'll happy again. So the way that Push works is this dumb fuck right here, and he is pushing this wall to okay, yeah, I don't immediately want to start talking about things I don't like, but this is something I really don't like. In almost every other game mode, there's a small theme or mission that you can see that's being done. On Control, Flashpoint, and Assault maps, each team needs to take control of the spot. In Hybrid and Escort, the overall goal is leading an item to the correct destination, like escorting a rich guy to his movie set or an artifact to a museum. It's a neat little lore reason why we're doing this. The fact that the goal in King's Row is to push this EMP down into the Omnic Refuge is kinda fun. I mean, it's very racist, but it's kinda fun. So the only lore reason I can think of as to why we're pushing this wall up another point is if Sisyphus himself signed us up to this task. And considering how this mod plays, There might actually be some weight to that theory. But okay, though I know I'm being very nitpicky right now, I promise it won't be like that for the rest of this video. So, continuing on, this right here is TS1. His purpose is to push things. That's all he does. He works exactly like a payload. He moves when someone is near him and stops if two teams are both huddled around him. The difference is he takes no sides and moves for anyone. Finally, a payload that isn't racist. He's actually pretty fast as long as he's not pushing the wall. See, the wall stays put no matter how far he pushes it. It's a marker of how far a team has pushed. At the halfway marker of each of the sides is a small stop. The robot, upon first reaching there, will stop in its tracks for a little bit before continuing on, allowing a major fight to happen then. Along with this, forward spawn is unlocked for the team. Forward spawn is only available once pushing the robot to this point. It will be disabled if the robot is returned to the middle and will have to be reactivated by pushing it back to the halfway mark. The goal of this game mode is to, and this is in very heavy quotation marks, push the barrier to the end. What actually ends up happening is either a push game will last 3 minutes, it's very clear that Overwatch did an absurd fucky-wucky on the team balancing, or, as is the case in 99% of matches, the game will last the full 10 minutes plus overtime. Yes, I know that 10 minutes isn't that bad, but then you remind yourself, even if you're losing pretty badly, the game is still more than likely going to last that full 10 minutes. In Hybrid, Escort, Control, Flashpoint, and shit, even Assault, at least the game will be quick if the matchmaking wasn't that good. But the spawn points in push make it so impossible to actually push to the last point. I swear, despite this game mode being out for 2 years, I can still only count the amount of games that's in it early on one hand. And almost all of those are on Esperanza! Now, what's especially sucky about push is I almost enjoy it. Like, to a degree that could be my favorite mode. And if the only problem was at match time, I could likely look past it. Sure, it really does suck having a game that lasts so long and you're just losing from start to end. But at the very least, the normal games are fun. Almost fun. See, there's another problem with push. Allow me to explain a scenario I found myself in a somewhat recent game. Now, to be fair, this game was in a casual match, but I still feel the need to talk about it, as I feel like it's a great example of the flaws with the game mode. Now, in that match, the enemy team pushed a fair way in a very short 3 minutes. My team, from there, took 5 minutes to repeat that. But despite my team taking longer to replicate their success, we still ended up winning the game. In every other game mode, both teams have to play the objective for the same amount of time in order to win. If, for no real reason at all, one of two teams just happen to have 1 extra minute on an attacking round of Escort, that would just be plain unfair. And that's exactly what push feels like. If you have an insane early lead, the enemy can still take it back while taking way longer than you did to get that lead. You can certainly argue it's the enemy team's fault for not putting up a solid enough defense. And I both can't help but agree and disagree. It feels bad, even if in reality it isn't bad. It feels bad, and game feel matters a lot. And that's why I specifically chose an example of a game that I won. Because even though we won, it felt wrong, since we didn't feel like it was deserved. Okay, those aren't two major problems. The game mode lasts a little long, and it feels a little unfair even if it isn't really. Well, there is one more major problem, and this one is just straight up unfair. It's how the game mode handles overtime. Now, for other game modes, I'll 100% argue that overtime is a fair and balanced mechanic for both sides. It removes the potential frustration of fighting an unwinnable game due to a lack of time. And either way, once you're in overtime, your chances of winning go way down if you're attacking. When at least one player is forced onto the card at all times, it makes fights a lot harder for the attacking team. Ults like a Diva Bomb become a whole lot more dangerous. A single fight loss becomes a game loss in overtime. And what's most good about overtime is, for almost all modes and competitive, both teams can take advantage of it. Guess which game mode single-handedly makes me specifically say almost? In push, overtime actively incentivizes your team to do poorly. See, only one of two teams can benefit from overtime. On control, if overtime gets triggered and both teams are 99%, if the currently attacking team grabs a point, the other team gets their own overtime to recapture. And Push just doesn't have this? This is actually weird since Push in Stadium almost has this. In Stadium you can see overtime show up, but then it just ends so fast, and all my time playing Stadium, I haven't actually seen a team re-grab the point. But that's actually a point I would love to bring up. Push in Stadium feels fun? Actually, it's almost my favorite game mode. In fact, before Season 18, it was my favorite game mode. But in Stadium, the 2-minute time limit means it's really easy for a team to start a lead in the first half and have the other team need to take it back in the second half. In fact, the endpoints are also a lot better. It's a lot more likely to see Push games end early in Stadium if the teams are uneven. Push actually shares a lot of its problems with Clash, a game mode I'm sure most of you have forgotten about. But the fixes it needs are a lot more simple than the ones needed for Push. All that really needs to be done is give the attacking team more points for winning points past mid. And also, speaking of Clash, I would like to give a massive shout out to everyone you see on screen here. They're all a part of the Daisy Lizard Rocketing Club Discord server, link in the description. Each and every one of them took time out of their day to play Clash and Assault with me so I could get footage and updated thoughts on the modes. If you want to help contribute to these videos and get a chance to play Overwatch with everyone else here, join the server and opt in to be notified for events. I'll fucking put at the end of the video, fuck you, Millicop. Push feels impossible to fix without drastically changing it. In Clash, all the problems had to do with the design of the game mode itself. Meanwhile, in Flashpoint, its problems stem from the maps. Push's problems are so deep that both the maps and structure of the mode need to be slightly altered in order to create a more enjoyable and satisfying game mode. But, you know what? I think I have an idea. See, I've actually been playing Push since before most of you have. There's this little known game called Splatoon, and it has a very similar game mode. Tower Control. In Tower Control, you have to stand on a tower that moves to either side of the map depending on which team is standing on it. If both teams have a player on it, the tower doesn't move. And if no players are on it, after a short time, it will slowly move back to the middle. This game mode never frustrated me in the same way that Push does. In fact, it's my second favorite game mode in all of Splatoon. So, considering this high praise, what are the few noticeable differences between Push and Tower Control? Well, for one, that timer. Splatoon competitive games only last 5 minutes. This is a pretty major difference. But the other one is map size. Maps in Splatoon are a lot smaller, meaning the distance you have to push is also a lot smaller. So, with that in mind, here is my proposed changes to Push. In my new version of Push, the push robot will now run back to mid when unattended by either team after a small bit of time. This is to prevent strategies involving not pushing the robot. However, he will only be going the same pace as he does when he's moving the wall. Other than that, the push robot will act the exact same way he always has. Along with that, what about those endpoints? Well, we're gonna move them back to about the last bin before the final stretch on the maps. A little bit further than their stadium counterparts, a little bit back from their current iteration. Thirdly, forward spawn. That's gone. No need for it. The next one is expected, but the timer in comp games will be lowered to 8 minutes. And finally, overtime will trigger for the losing team. However, if they end up pushing it farther than the enemy team, their overtime clock will start ticking, giving them the slightest chance to still take it back. So for everyone who wasn't listening to me for the past couple minutes, I want the push robot to run back to mid, endpoints moved back, forward spawn removed, 8 minutes in casual and competitive modes, and overtime to work for both teams. But that's really all I got. As always, if this video intrigued you, share it around. I want to spark conversation within the Overwatch community. Maybe I just made the most wrong video ever and everyone laughs at me, or maybe I just made one that will eventually lead to the game mode being changed for the better. Either way, as long as people talk about the game mode, I feel my job here is done. And if you enjoyed, like, comment, and everything else, you can give me money if you want. That'll get you early access to videos and shit. That's pretty cool, I think. Huh, I did not write a good outro for this video, did I? I'd like to give a massive shout out to my channel members, Kovic, Clementine, and Gaiso. If you'd like early access videos and your name shout out at the end of videos, you can join for as low as $3 a month.